Hi everybody, Miss Gestelin here. I have a slideshow that I'm going to share with you about A Midsummer Night's Dream, about William Shakespeare, and about the Globe Theatre. Starting out with a question. Who was William Shakespeare and why was he so important? Well, the answer is he is considered by most literary experts to be the greatest playwright to have ever written in any language in the history of humankind. William Shakespeare was born on April 23rd, 1564, and died on April 23rd, 1616. And by the way, when we are done with this slideshow, there is going to be a little quiz, and I'm going to try to give you some hints about what things might be on that quiz. And one of those things is if you take a look at his birth date and the date of death, you'll notice that he died on his birthday. Then we have some pictures of William Shakespeare. We know that there were only two authentic portraits of William Shakespeare that were ever created, and they were both created after he died. One was an engraving, and I believe it's this one, and another was a statue, and I don't think it's this statue. I think it was more like a bust. And then all of the pictures that we see of William Shakespeare were then created from those two original pieces of artwork that were both created after he died. So I guess what that tells me is we're not 100% sure what he looked like, but this is as good of a guess as we have. William Shakespeare is famous for having written well-known quotes, including the following, and this is one of my favorites. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. That's from one of Shakespeare's comedies, As You Like It. One thing I like about this quote is that it's a metaphor. And if you look at what it says, all the world's a stage. So it's comparing the world that we live in to a stage. And all the people are merely players. And players is another word for actors. So we are all actors on a stage in a little play that we call our lives. When it says they have their exits and their entrances, we have lots of entrances and exits throughout our lives. For instance, not too long ago, you entered into the 2020-21 school year. At the end of this school year, we're going to exit and we're going to go into summer. And then next year, you'll come back and that will be another experience for you. When it says one man in his time plays many parts, I like to say that each of us plays many roles in our lives. For example, right now I'm playing the role of a teacher and you are playing the role of a student, but I'm also a mother and a friend and a daughter, just like you are probably a daughter or a son or a friend or a grandchild, and of course, many, many other things dealing with your interests. Like, for example, I'm a reader, I'm a volleyball player. You might be an artist, or you might be a basketball player, or you might be a hunter. So those are all some of the different roles that we play in our lives. Okay, so this is a very famous quote from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it is from one of the play's most well-known characters, whose name is Puck. Puck is a fairy. He's a mischievous fairy. And he says toward the end of the play, if we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear. And you can tell that that quote sort of goes with the name of the play, A Midsummer Night's Dream. By the way, some of the pictures in this slideshow are from the American Players Theater website, and this is from a production of this play that APT did a few years ago. Here are a couple more pictures from that production. You can see very colorful characters. This over here is Oberon. This is Titania. They are the king and the queen of the fairies. Down here with the donkey's head, this is Bottom. And then, looks like we have, I think, yeah, these are some of the working class men, and it looks like Puck is about to play a trick on them. All right, next. Biography. Shakespeare was born and raised in Stratford-on-Avon. At the age of 18, he married Anne Hathaway, who bore him 3 children, Susanna and twins Hamnet and Judith. Between 1585 and 1592, he began a successful career in London as an actor, writer, and eventually part owner of a playing company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, later known as the King's Men. He appears to have retired to Stratford around 1613, where he died 3 years later. Body of work. Shakespeare's surviving works consist of 38 plays, 154 sonnets, 2 long narrative poems, and several other poems. His plays have been translated into every major living language and are performed more often than those of any other playwright. By the way, 154 sonnets, that might be a question on the quiz as well. And this is a copy of William Shakespeare's actual signature. Shakespeare produced most of his known work between 1590 and 1613. His early plays were mainly comedies and histories, genres he raised to the peak of sophistication and artistry by the end of the 16th century. He then wrote mainly tragedies until about 1608, including Hamlet, King Lear, and Macbeth, considered some of the finest examples in the English language. In his last phase, he wrote tragicomedies, also known as romances, and he collaborated with other playwrights. I think that's interesting because nowadays, especially with music, you see professional artists that collaborate with each other. I also wanted to point out that a quiz question may be the types of plays that he wrote, and this slide mentions comedies, histories, tragedies, and then the fourth kind can be either called tragicomedies or romances. Okay, so now we have some pictures of Shakespeare's birthplace. This is a side view of the home that Shakespeare was born in. Here is a front view of it. Now, the original house was only half of that picture, I believe. And then here's kind of another angle, different time of year. And then this next picture, this is actually me. I am at Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford-on-Avon, which of course is in England. And I had the great honor of being able to go visit my daughter, Kate, who was a college student. She was studying abroad this semester. And I was able to actually go and see some of the sites about Shakespeare that I've always been interested in. Here is a picture of me standing inside one of the rooms of Shakespeare's birthplace. And you'll see that these are my feet. I was actually able to walk on the stones, the same stones that Shakespeare would have walked on as a little boy. All right, here we have another room in Shakespeare's home. By the way, these paper things are paper swans. I actually got to visit Shakespeare's birthplace the day after his birthday. And school children in the town of Stratford had created over, or maybe it was 1,000 different paper swans. And they did that in honor of Shakespeare because Ben Jonson, another playwright who wrote around the same time of Shakespeare, referred to Shakespeare as Sweet Swan of Avon. So that's why the swans are made in his honor. Okay, these pictures are taken outside of Anne Hathaway's cottage. Anne Hathaway, again, being Shakespeare's wife. And interesting fact about her, she was 26 and he was 18 when they got married. So she was 8 years older than him. But this was the cottage that she grew up in and was the owner of when Shakespeare married her. And nowadays, they really do a nice job of keeping up the flower gardens at many of these sites. And I thought this was just sort of a pretty picture. I also like that cobblestone sidewalk. Okay, this is an interesting story. When you read about Shakespeare, one of the things that's sort of funny or interesting is the fact that in his will, William Shakespeare left his wife in the will the second best bed. And this is a picture of that bed. People hear that and they think, oh, he must not have liked his wife if he left her the second best bed. But this bed would have been the marriage bed. It would have been the bed that they would have slept in together. And the best bed they actually kept for guests. So that's the story behind the second best bed. Here we have another interesting story. This chair is called the courting chair. And according to legend, this is the chair that Shakespeare sat in when he courted Anne. Here we have Holy Trinity Church in Stratford. It's a beautiful church. I was lucky enough to be able to go into it. And this is where Shakespeare is buried. Here's a beautiful picture from inside the church. And here's a picture of his gravesite. It says right on it, the grave of the poet William Shakespeare. Another thing that I thought was very interesting is these two documents are posted in the church. This one from 1564 contains the date on which William Shakespeare was baptized, April 26th. Typically, babies were baptized 3 days after they were born, which is why we celebrate his birthday as April 23rd. And then over here in 1616, on April 23rd, is the record of William Shakespeare dying. Okay, here we have a river. This is the Avon River. Remember, he was born in Stratford on Avon. And here's a swan, which I took a picture of because he's the sweet swan of Avon. And then this is the Shakespeare National Theater, which has been built in Stratford in honor of Shakespeare. And the reason I put this picture in is when I did go visit my daughter Kate, we were lucky enough to see the musical Waitress at a theater in London. So we didn't see it at the Shakespeare Theater, but I just thought I would include it. All right, some more facts. The Globe Theater, life in the theater. The actors of Shakespeare's time performed in outdoor public playhouses like the Globe, also in private indoor spaces at court, halls at universities, and even toured to neighboring provinces when the bubonic plague forced the closing of theaters in London. The very first outdoor public playhouse was built in 1576 by James Burbage, father of Richard Burbage, the most famous actor in Shakespeare's company, and it was simply named the Theater. By the way, the fact that they toured in the country because of the bubonic plague, that may be a quiz question as well. More theaters were soon erected on the bank side, built just outside the jurisdiction of London, where things like prostitution and blood sports like cockfights, bear baiting, and dog fighting were carried on. Many civic officials were actually hostile to the performance of drama and petitioned the Royal Council to abolish it. This, of course, only helped the cause because people always want to go where they think there's going to be a little bit of interesting action. People came in droves across the Thames River and over the London Bridge for these forms of entertainment. And in 1599, Shakespeare's company got a bigger piece of the action by building the Globe Theater. Now, this is a picture of the replica of the Globe Theater, which was built in the 1990s. But in as many ways as possible, it was built to be an exact replica of the original. They used the same materials. They used thatch for the roof. And one thing that I thought was fascinating is that when they built it, they used wooden pegs instead of nails or screws because those things were not available when the Globe was originally built. It is said that Shakespeare's company dismantled Burbage's theater, the one that was called the Theater, which was threatened by difficulties in renewing the lease on the land. See, what happened was Shakespeare's company owned the building, but they didn't own the land upon which the building stood. So what they did was they transported its timbers piece by piece across the nearly frozen Thames River during the Christmas season of 1598. The weather may have aided Shakespeare's company in eluding their landlord. the snow hiding their activity, and the freezing of the Thames, allowing them to slide the timbers across the bankside without paying tolls for the repeated trips over London Bridge. So I just think that's kind of an interesting tale about how they took down the theater. They took all the timbers down and they carried them or pushed them across the river and rebuilt the Globe Theater on the other side. The first Globe did burn down in 1613 when its thatch roof was set aflame by cannon fire during a production of Henry VIII. Its successor was immediately rebuilt on the same location and remained in use until the beginning of the English Civil War in 1642. Theaters like the Globe held vast audiences of 2,000 or 3,000 people, with spectators paying more to sit or stand in the 2 or 3 levels of roofed galleries that encircled the stage. In a minute, I'll show you some pictures of what I'm talking about there. The galleries extended on the upper levels all the way around the theater. The open space, with only the heavens for a roof, provided cheaper viewing for the groundlings. The floor on which they stood was made of mortar and sometimes of ash mixed with the shells of hazelnuts, a favorite food for Shakespeare's audiences. Okay, so here we have a picture. This is taken, of course, in the replica of the Globe Theater. You can see the stage a little bit over here. You can see all these people standing toward the front. They would be the groundlings. Now, nowadays, you tend to pay more, even if you have to stand, you pay more if you get to be close to the action. But back then, it was more expensive to be in the galleries, partly because you got to sit and partly because there was a roof above you as well. But in the middle of the theater where the groundlings stood, there was no roof. So if it rained, they got rained on. Here's another picture of those galleries. Here we have the trap door. Shakespeare's Globe Theater had a trap door in it, and it was used in various productions. One of the most famous uses of it is in the grave digging scene of Shakespeare's tragedy Hamlet. That might be a quiz question too. Shakespeare also had to work without lighting because most of his plays were performed during the daytime in the outside globe. Using his words, Shakespeare tells us everything we need to know. Here's an example. Romeo in Romeo and Juliet says, "The gray-eyed morn smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light, and darkness, fleckled like a drunkard, reels from fourth day's pathway made by Titan's wheels." When we read his plays with new eyes, especially when we're looking for these descriptive passages, it's almost as if we were reading a brand new play, and then we can see some of the directorial clues that Shakespeare included in his dialogue. The only women found in the theater at the time were in the audience. All the female roles were played by boys, many of whom were choir boys, and often orphan boys from St. Paul's Cathedral. Men owned, ran, and acted in the theater. But instead of having one manager who leased the theater to a company of actors, Shakespeare's company managed themselves. Each actor in Shakespeare's group was a shareholder with the right to share in the profits as well as the responsibility for the expenses. All right, here's a good view of the stage. You'll notice these pillars. They are just made of wood, but they are painted to look like marble. And you can see just the decorative painting that was done. In this next picture, you have, I think, a better view of those pillars, and you can also start to see what the heavens looked like. The heavens was basically a nighttime sky that was painted to look like the heavens, and it had various pictures from things from like the universe. Let me see if I can. Oh, here's a slightly better view. Like the sun, stars, different zodiac paintings were included. Okay, a few little known facts about the Elizabethan theater. I found this fascinating when I first learned this. Elizabethan diction, so the way the people spoke during Shakespeare's time, their dialect was closest or in approximation to what the hillbillies in America, in Appalachia, in Kentucky, speak today. So I guess what I'm trying to say is whenever we think about Shakespeare, I think we always imagine the people speaking the way British people do today. But supposedly that's not the case. Supposedly the way they spoke is similar to the way that people in America speak in Kentucky and other areas of the South. Actors learned their parts in about a week. So if there was a new play, you'd have about a week to learn your lines. The leading man might have had to memorize 800 lines a day. A leading man would also learn and retain over 70 different roles within a 3-year period. Plays would run anywhere from 1 or 2 performances to as long as 6 months, depending on how popular it was. Performances ran 6 days a week, every day but Sunday, from about 2 to 5 in the afternoon. They did it so that obviously they needed the light, but that was the time of day where the sun wasn't directly overhead. Again, all the female roles were played by boys. This might contribute to the reason why there's very little sexual or physical contact between characters in Shakespeare's plays. And another little known fact, kissing was actually called bussing back then. Playgoing was considered immoral by many people, and therefore the City of London did not allow advertising. Flags were flown to let people know that there was a play. A black flag signified that it would be a tragedy, a white flag meant a comedy, and a red flag meant that it was a history play. They would also use a trumpet fanfare to proclaim to the people that a performance was about to begin. Near the theaters were bawdy houses. Oops, sorry. Let me get back to that. Were bawdy houses, bear baiting arenas where they would chain bears and bait them, or dogs would tease them and bite them. There were also bull gardens, cockfights, pubs, and taverns that did a booming business. Pimps and prostitutes and other vendors hawked their wares. Pickpockets, thieves, and swindlers also were there. So we can kind of see why the law didn't necessarily like the theater. So those swindlers and other people roamed in the crowd. All of Southwark's property belonged to the Bishop of Winchester. So basically what that's saying is that that church actually profited from some of those illegal activities. Theater patrons were transported over the Thames River by little boats that were called wherry boats. At one time, over 2,000 wherries made their way to and from the theater district on a daily basis. It's estimated that about 10% of London's population regularly attended the theater, which is actually more than people attend in cities today. Although, if you think about movies, I'm guessing that the number of people attending movies is probably higher than that 10%. The audience would have been a cross-section of people, a lot like what you might see if you went to a professional baseball game today. The Elizabethan theater held 3,000 spectators. They said that whenever they would go to a play, that they would say that they were going to hear a play instead of see a play. And what that shows us is that Shakespeare's audience was a very oral audience, meaning that they listened. And part of that is because many of the people in Shakespeare's audience would not have been able to read. So there was much more focus on what they heard. As people entered the theater, they would drop their admission into a box, which is where we get the movie term box office. Spectators could sit on cushions with the gentry, or they could stand in the pit on the bare ground, elbow to elbow with the other groundlings for 1 penny. The most exclusive patrons actually sat on the stage, but that was only for noblemen. And each floor that you would go up in the gallery would cost 1 penny more. All right, vendors, they sold things like beer, water, oranges, nuts, gingerbread, and apples, all of which were occasionally thrown at the actors. Back then, if the audience did not like the entertainment, they made sure to let the actors know. Hazelnuts were the most popular theater snack, sort of the Elizabethan equivalent for popcorn. There were no public restaurant or restrooms for the 3,000 spectators. Um, Nor were there any intermissions. So, because of that, you can imagine that the playhouse smelled of things like urine, ginger, garlic, beer, tobacco, and sweat. Uh, Partly because, and I don't know, this is another fact that I'm not sure if you're aware of, very few Elizabethans ever bathed, or at least didn't bathe on a regular basis. Words, words, words. One of the problems that student actors or readers face in Shakespeare is the language, the unfamiliar words, strange constructions, and the new words and phrases created by Shakespeare. Elizabethan England was predominantly an oral and verbal society. People were accustomed to listening. In fact, less than 50% of Shakespeare's audience would have been able to read or write. Actors who could not read had to learn their parts by ear. Actors who could read were given little scrolls of paper with cues and lines written on them. This role could be worked through the fingers with one hand, leaving the other hand free for business gestures as the actor rehearsed. One such role is still in existence at Dulwich College in England. And finally, the first English dictionary was published in 1604, near the end of Shakespeare's writing career. It was called A Table Alphabetical of Hard Words. More than 10,000 words, fully a quarter of the words in the English language at the time, were created by or during Shakespeare's lifetime. Shakespeare was not only writing plays, he was helping to create the modern English language. Shakespeare used 26,000 completely different words in his works. Now, compare that to this next fact. An Elizabethan teenager used about 2,100 words on a daily basis. And yet today, an average American uses only 900 words in a lifetime. So think about the number of words that we have lost over the last few hundred years. Once again, the source for some of the pictures and for much of the information that I shared with you in this slideshow came from the American Players Theater website. And I'm very thankful to them for the information that they provided. So next up, there will be a short quiz. Good luck on that. And I'll look forward to seeing all of you soon.